Hello, welcome to Art of the Game here over at Cabbit Crossing. We are three experienced game masters from various different game systems, and we're going to share some tips and tricks, maybe do a little debating. And for today, Woody started up the concept of wanting to do this series. So, Woody, why don't you introduce us to today's topic?
Okay, so we were talking about how to handle injuries in a role-playing game setting, and I think this is a really important topic because in 5e, we people have the idea that these characters are damage sponges, right? Which isn't necessarily actually what's happening, but it's kind of has the appearance of it. So there is this idea that this thought experiment you can get into with role playing games. Let's say that you're some asshole noble that just murdered the child of a rival house, and you've been captured by. Yeah, I know. You've been captured by bandits, and they're about to ransom you back, and you're getting lippy, and they decide to chop your hand off, your sword wielding hand, right? So let's say they did 100 points of damage. Let's say they did 100 points of damage, and you've got 10 hit points. Does that kill you? No.
Yes.
No. It's your hand, Greg.
I know how this works. You die immediately.
No, you do not. No, yeah. Yes, no. You have 1 hit point left. You're sewing your own wounds. You do a point of damage and you die. No, this is not how these things work. So, so that's
you use a hit dice and grow it back.
Sure, but like the when you get into this thought experiment, you start to see how hit points falls apart. And hit points is not a rating of how much punishment you can take. It's more of a rating of like will to live and ability to evade attacks and be able to tolerate pain, right? And it's not necessarily inherent durability necessarily. And so you need to like how you flavor the expression of injury in your game has probably a lot like directly speaks to the experience your players are going to have and like how good your game is in a lot of ways, because people will sometimes get bored if they are basically a healing yo-yo, and they shouldn't be. And I have lots to say, but I'm going to see what my peers think.
To be honest, I think a lot of people look at hit points differently. The way that you're describing it seems useful and consistent and logical. It actually reminds me of the Lord of the Rings MMO a bit, because instead of hit points, I think they had like morale was your basic ability to keep fighting. And bards actually restored your hit points by giving you morale.
I like that.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't dealt with injuries well in most of my games I've ran, to be honest. So I don't have too much to add right now.
We didn't really address it at all in Star Wars. I mean, not too much, but
Yeah.
Well, and you don't have to, but I think that you add a certain amount of what you call plausibility to the game, and that if people have legitimate stakes, like if people are getting more and more hurt over time as they abuse themselves, I think that will make for a more interesting experience. Because they can get all their hit points back. It's kind of like a boxer getting beat to shit, and then you have to go sit in the ring. You take a short break, take a drink of water. Like they're all pumping you up with your trainer, right? And you get right back in, and you can keep going. Right, because you need that breather, right? But that doesn't mean that the injuries went away, right?
Because that's what hit dice are, I guess you would say, is meant to be, is that breather.
Yeah.
I mean, would it be fair to say that hit points is basically plot armor and
yeah, you can say that. But so for me, like if somebody ran you through with a sword and the sword gets pulled out, you should be taking bleed damage for one. There should be some sort of a substantial penalty because you've taken that hit, and you probably have an internal organ injured, and you're probably running just on adrenaline at that point, right? And secondly,
you'll probably be dead in a couple hours.
Yeah, exactly, or sooner. And then so you better have that cleric. But 3, there is if you patch yourself up, that hole is still in your gut, right? And 4, I think there should be a limit on how thorough magic healing should be. Like there should be the spell that heals everything should be the high level version, and the low level version should be the thing that like it can heal you and can get those hit points back, but you're still going to be hurt to a point. And there's also things that clerics can't resolve, like a cleric can't handle dehydration, they can't handle exhaustion, they can't handle disease very well, right? And there's like this list of things that it doesn't do well that we never take into account in these games anyways.
And you could always make it a higher level spell that does fix it, right? Like greater restoration to restore an arm, let's say, or something like that.
So, because right now we're talking about 5e, I am going to mention later on, before we're done, I'm going to mention some different, how injury systems are done in different games, or some other games that I play.
I think the most important thing, and I think what you're going to get into, Marks, is this idea too, maybe to some degree, is that if you're going to do injury systems, one thing that's extremely frustrating to players is when you just make it up on the fly. I would not suggest doing that. I would make sure that it seems consistent and that it's like an actual home rule.
Because I was going to say, like, just to push back a little bit, or at least not push back, but give a perspective of someone who's watching this, who's only played 5e, for example. And they're like, well, but when do I know I'm impaled? And when do I know I should take that bleed damage? Because if my GM just says I got it, I'm going to get really annoyed because I'm like, what do I bleed damage? Where's it in the rules at, Well,
I mean,
so to me, that sounds like you're tweaking and homebrewing a little bit, unless there's rules I'm unaware of, or optional rules, perhaps.
Well, I think it does talk about bleed damage in the Game Master's Guide, but this falls under the powers of the Game Master, which we discussed in a previous episode. Like, the GM is there to make certain adjudications, because like what you have here in this wonderful book, I'm going to pull it off the shelf here.
Is it Riffs?
No, it's this book right here.
Okay. That's a different episode. Great.
Yes. What, you want me to hold this one up too? No, this book is about as basic as it gets, right?
Yeah.
And it for as comprehensive as it is, it hardly talks about anything, right? No, seriously, this is a stripped down game, right?
Yeah, especially compared to like D20 used to be.
Yeah, and like anyways, there are a million questions that are going to come up, right? And the GM's job is to answer those questions and make a decision. And it doesn't discuss injuries at all in any meaningful way. It doesn't really cover poisonings, even though it's in the artwork. But like, it just like there's a lot of things it doesn't cover. And the injury system or the condition system of the book, literally, it's like, how many ways can we split the same hair? Right.
The only thing I would say it has is exhaustion. And I do use that. If you go unconscious in my games, you get 1 level exhaustion every time you go unconscious, right?
Yeah, no, I'm down with that.
Isn't there some optional bleed rule? Or am I making that up?
Optional what rule?
Bloodied state?
It doesn't do anything, though.
People generally consider that you're bloodied when you're at half hit points as a way of telling people that you've got the enemy close. But this is like, but then again, like this book, if it covered everything, it would be twice as thick, right? Like it shouldn't cover everything. It should cover just enough. And
it's
I think
actually one of the good things about it, right? The fact that it doesn't cover everything and that it does keep it kind of open for the GM to make things up as they need.
And this might be getting into our next topic, but it's like there's a lot implied that isn't discussed in that book, and you as the GM have have the power to put it in, and whether it's actually in the book or not, like the thing that is that your players are actually going to have more fun with it if there's stakes and there's risk and challenge, and like a person shouldn't basically suffer a concussion and then take a long rest and then they're fine the next day. They should still have that concussion, right? And a character getting their arm chopped off should mean something. And like I actually think when I deal with healing spells, I think of it more in terms of the classic depiction of a healing factor in a superhero story, where you have to set that bone, because if the bone's not set properly on your arm or your leg or whatever, and you cast a healing spell, it's going to fuse to whatever its position it's in, and you have to re-break. Oh. Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
and see, I feel like that's a flavor thing, right? Like how wizards you technically have components, but a lot of people don't use them, right?
Yeah, who cares? Right? Yeah.
Never mind.
You actually don't need to, you have a focus. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that doesn't require any homebrewing or anything. That's just like talking about how your world works, which is really easy to insert for a GM.
Yeah, but I think that stuff's more fun also for the players too.
Oh yeah.
Because there should be that element of danger. Like, I just got shot with a bullet. You now healed me. That's great. I'm back in the fight. But you've now healed over that bullet. there's a bullet now in me, and I can't get it out. And that's
can't go on airports anymore.
No,
I get to the-
and it's going to be painful. Greg, you're about to say something, and we cut you
sorry.
off there.
No, I was going to mention one of the people who commented on one of our videos, David Andrews.
Oh yes,
He talked about some of the stuff with that, and going through with him and some of the others in the comments. I think my perfect injury, because like I said, I haven't really dealt with this very much, and I think I will going forward. And what I'll probably do is look it up, maybe use AI to help create, I don't know, a table with maybe a D100 table with a list of injuries, progressively worse the higher you roll. And every time you go unconscious, you have to roll on that table to see exactly what type of injury, and they'll be consistent every time. And the players aren't thinking, oh, you're just screwing me over. It's like, no. You know, and if they do get their hand chopped off, you know, that'll be on the injuries list. Just go find it and use the rules that are outlined for it, right? And things like that.
Well,
you should look at Free League's year 0 rules. I just got the bundle because we had people mention Free League in the comments section and stuff, and I have not read enough to be able to comment intelligently on it. But I do know that there's a rule in there where they do have a chart, like you get a certain maybe it's when you get criticals or something like that you roll a chart and get some kind of injury or something.
Every critical might be a little rough, but maybe.
well, like the Palladium system actually addresses that too in a similar way, where there's it's more of a guide to the game master, because you can either roll it randomly or just pick the ones appropriate. But they have charts for flesh wounds and charts for serious injuries, and they have like their hit point systems are divided into 2 chunks where past a certain point it's just a flesh wound, and after that it is life-threatening injuries. And so you're supposed to technically roll on that chart when you're taking damage in that lower range. And you know, a lot of people don't, but it's like it's there. And like in my game, I even went out of my way to specifically put an entire appendices just on how to address this very topic, just because I feel so strongly about it, because there isn't really something built into the 5e engine to address it at all. And I think it's grossly missing.
I do think people should add injury stuff. They should probably just homebrew it themselves, right? Because like you said, the book's just general. But if you do that, just make sure it's consistent, right? You don't want to just make it feel like the GM's picking on you. No, have it actually be something consistent that you make that's a bit rule based, at least a little bit.
But I think there is like a logical point to it. Like regardless of what the penalty is, right? A person that just has a hole in their chest, you know, because they got impaled. Yeah. If they're able to survive, which it's a fantasy adventure, sure, you know, I'm sure that could happen. But like, there has to be some logical consequence to this, right? Because like that, even if you healed it over with magic healing, which is probably the only thing keeping the person alive, there has to be a like that's a sensitive area, right? If you're taking another punch to that spot, like that has to have a penalty attached to it, because that's going to be painful, right? You know, you know, if you got your arm broken, your arm is broken, man. Like, even if you fuse the bones back together with magic, they're not going to be as strong as they were. And
that's why I think it's good to have a chart with consistent injuries and tells you how the actual mechanics for each type of injury. Like maybe you get a -3 that progressively goes -2, -1 over a certain amount of time. I don't know, but like, you know, something like that. But I know Marks wants to bring up Mythras and its hit location.
Yeah, you know, I'm going to talk about Mythras because what you remind me of is a lot of Mythras stuff, right? Or RuneQuest too, is because it's based on RuneQuest, which has been around almost as long as D&D, and they do hit locations. So every time you hit, you roll to see where you hit, and then there's certain special effects you can get where you can have more control over where you hit. But in general, you're rolling random at first. Because it's like when you get in a fight with sword or something, you take an opening when you get it, right?
Yeah.
And then, so you have hit point locations, and you have different hit points for each of those locations. And the way they do it is they have like your positive points. Let's say you got 1 to 7 hit points on your arm or something. That's when you take damage, that's in that positive range. It's considered a minor wound, cuts, scratches, bruises, that kind of stuff. When you get less than 0 and you get a negative, it's considered serious wounds. So when you get 0 below, which can cause scarring, and it can take let's say where you keep it with the arm thing, you might get your arm stunned from pain or something for 1d3 turns. You can't use that arm. And you do an endurance roll to see if maybe you lose the arm. Not like lose it, but you can't use it for right now. or you might fall unconscious or something. And then if you get below negative of whatever that point is, so if we're taking 7 hit points and we get -7 or less, you fall into major wounds, which could incapacitate, kill you. It means your arm's severed, that kind of stuff, or shattered, the pieces, depending on what kind of attack it is. And then they actually, because they're separating these wound levels, minor, serious, major, when you heal, you actually heal at different rates for those wounds. So it kind of touches on what you're talking about a little bit. So like if I get a serious wound where I'm in negatives, well, let's take minor wounds. Minor wounds, I would heal X amount of points per day. Serious wounds where I'm in negative, those wounds I heal X amount of points per week. And then if I get a major wound, like when I'm really negative, and I still somehow survive, you're talking about months of healing from that. So and then they have stuff where you have magic, or say you get like a healing factor. The healing factor would bump it up. So like my minor wounds heal up in minutes versus days. You know, that kind of It's just kind of interesting way.
I'd actually push back against that type of system a little bit if I were making my own system, because what I don't like in systems is where they get so nitty gritty, where you're having to roll something every single hit you do, and then have to know how all these special rules work effectively. It's like, okay, it's this level, which means I go to this page, which means it has this thing. It does, you know, I don't really like that as much. The reason I like just the injury list, where it's like, okay, you went unconscious, roll on this injury table, is because you don't have to understand the system to use that. You can just go down, see the injury that I happen to do, follow the rules it tells you right there, instead of having to understand a more complicated system. Because the thing I think that really kills systems sometimes, especially if you've ever played Shadowrun, is complication in systems can really kill it in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And that's the fear I have with injuries sometimes.
I feel like it sounds more complicated than it really is. Like you're just looking at your hit points. You already have it right in D&D, where you have a positive hit point range, a negative point, because when you get negative to your max negative, that's when you're dead. And it's basically the same similar concept, except
I don't have a lot of experience with it yet. We've only done a little bit, right? But you still have to roll a location every time you do it, and then you have to do damage. And then if you're recovering, you have to go look up the rules for how to recover from the type of injury that you have, right? Which I'm not a huge. I mean, I don't know. Maybe it'll play out, and you're right, and it won't be that, and we're not gonna have to stop the game and look it up. But
well, there's no chart to look at, but I know what you mean. I'm not saying it's perfect right there, but I'm just saying it addresses some of those issues. You do something simpler than that for D&D, you could do that, you know.
Well, D&D is supposed to be a simpler game, but
well, there's something I did want to point out. We do have these things, which I hope people can see easily on my camera, but these are hit location dice.
Oh yeah.
There we go. Yeah, see, so I there's also some which just says a location. This one I like because it shows it. God, I wish I knew where to buy these things cheap. But yeah, so
one where the head is missing.
Well, this one kind of does. This one shows a headshot right there. But the problem with these dice is that they give every single body part an equal location, and so it doesn't take into account the fact that majority of your shots are still going to be center mass. So I think these dice are a good
for that.
Yeah, well, I think these dice are a good solution if you're playing games where you just have a hit point total. If you want to determine what the injury is or determine where a hit might hit, but the thing about it is that I think that you'd have to figure out most of the hits are going to be center mass. So in situations where it's not center mass, like let's say you rolled a D8 or a D6, and like on a 1 you had you rolled the die, right? And so that's when you would determine what the location was, and you still have a chance of hitting a center mass shot, right? So, but
Chris, what do you think about this?
I would say when you say center mass, because I think that too by default. I think that's D&D training us to think that way. Because then I think about real life fights and stuff, and you get defensive wounds on your arms a lot when you're fighting. People go for heads a lot.
Sword fighting actually very often ends up with hitting the hand and the arm more than anything.
Yeah.
Even in HEMA, it's considered like a perfect hit or whatever. You just hit their arm.
Yeah. So that's the only thing I would say.
That's perfectly fair. And actually, getting back to the Palladium system, because Palladium at one point before they made the Rifts RPG, they had Robotech, right? And then those rules ported into Rifts. But when you're playing with giant robots, power armor, you do have hit locations for different body parts, and so it actually works better when you can distribute the damage of those other locations. And in that system, you are defending yourself. That's built into the game mechanics.
You had to turn a lot in that to make sure you get hit in the right place and stuff.
Well, it depends what direction you're being hit from, and they had charts for that too. But it's because you are allowed to make a defensive check to block, right? You can actually choose to take that hit on your arm, if because you can try to parry, and that's actually something that could be incorporated into D&T if you wanted to, because like you can also simply like take like for example, you can do what I did, and you replace the proficiency bonus with a die. So there's this high-low range now, and then so like a +6 becomes a D12, a +2 is a D4. But you can also do the same thing of taking the 10 out of the equation, the base 10, and replacing that with a D20 roll, and that could be also incorporated into a defensive mechanic where you have the ability to defend yourself, and you could choose how you're defending.
So I'm curious what you guys think about this concept, because one thing I would not like thinking as a player, because to be honest, I'm a player as much as I run games for me, because I know you guys are more like forever GMs maybe, but I'm more of a hybrid, I guess. But the one thing that would very much annoy me is if I just stroll into a battle, the first hit I get is a crit, and I roll for an injury, and I lose my arm, right? That would actually annoy me a little bit, because because there's no agency there, right? Like there's nothing I could have done. Whereas if I know that if going unconscious, for instance, would possibly give me an injury, then I know, okay, well, I'm at half health. I probably shouldn't wait till I'm 0, because that's what you do in 5e, right? You wait till someone goes 0 and do healing word.
Well, that's again, like the game is only as good as the guy running the game, right? So a GM should never do that. Like, okay, the first hit the critical hit doesn't have to take your arm. That's a movie plot, right? Or a book plot. That's not an RPG plot, right? That's
well, but if you roll and get a negative whatever,
that's what I'm saying. When it comes to consistent rules, right? Like you don't want to have it to where it's like, oh, I did a crit, I rolled everything for you to lose your arm, but because you're a player, I don't want that to happen to you, I'm not going to do it. That also feels bad, because you never want a player to think that they got a break because the GM was nice, right?
Right, but the GM
that also feels crap.
Should be doing things silently, right? And so you can always, I don't know, maybe you've never done this, Greg, but like, oh, you're okay. Okay, let's go. Let's keep going. Or that hit you. I mean, it's like, you're crafting.
You're gonna get so many comments about. Like,
no.
I just
that is what you do. You're crafting an experience. Okay, players don't want to know how the soup is. I know. The players don't want to know how the soup is made, right? They don't. The only ones who do are going to be GMs themselves, right?
I actually don't do that a lot. I've done it for sure, but I don't do that a lot. But my point is, if you're going to make a system around injuries, make one that gives maximum agency and maximum punishment for decisions. If it's in certain ways, right?
I think you want to. I think what you want, because like with Monster of the Week, for example, you get as a hunter, you get 7 harm boxes. They're basically 7 hit points.
Yeah,
and after you get 4 of them, you're considered unstable, which is sort of like bloodied in a way, but you actually could be bleeding out, losing hit points. But the rules of how that works, how fast you bleed out or exactly injury, is all up to the GM. And I know sometimes people don't mind that, but sometimes people feel like that's taking away agency, and they feel like, I don't know how to judge that and stuff. So I know that's some people love it, some people hate it, whenever people do that. And if it feels inconsistent, they get frustrated.
You got to read the room.
Well, I know, but people keep track. People keep track of how of everybody's roles and what's going on, and they can feel the imbalance sometimes.
That's why you read the room.
Well, it's beyond reading the room. It's being consistent, because people don't like it when you're not consistent, right? That's an everybody thing.
That absolutely, but you also have to play to the experiences. Like if you have people that just don't like that injuries, they want to be superheroes.
Yeah,
let them be superheroes. That
you want to be action hero.
Yeah,
just rub it off.
Yeah.
You don't want your arm cut off in one hit, probably.
Actually,
you want to cut other people's arms off in one hit, but not yours.
I have a friend that lost an arm in a campaign and has had the loss of lose an arm curse in every campaign after that. Like, he's consistent. It's become a running joke. Even one time he made a character with a cybernetic arm and says, "Hey, check it out, Woody! I got it out of the way early."
Just make a character with it.
And he even one time he's like, "Okay, so if I sacrifice my arm to shove this guy's head into this thing and chop it off, is that okay?" Yes, Jeff, you can do that. Yeah, okay. He's like, I'm going to lose
make
it
a
anyways.
character
Let's
with
go
3
for
arms.
it. Yeah, no, yeah, right. Yeah, but with Thursday, he's like, I'm going to lose it anyways. Let's just do this. And then I'm like, okay, you know.
But I think just to mention some other injury systems real quick and stuff, because it gives people ideas. If like you're a new GM playing D&D, you're like, well, what do I do? I don't know, you know. So, and what a great way to do is steal from other games and steal some ideas.
Yeah, totally. Like,
but I wanted to mention
incestuous industry.
Yes.
I wanted to mention Zero Engine again. I don't know it super well, but I think it's something you might actually like, Greg. At least this part of it, maybe not everything else. But the critical injuries, I was wrong. It wasn't critical hits. It's like if you get like below 0, basically, or there's it matters on the game. They tweak how it works in different games, but they have a chart that's physical and other things. But I thought this is how creative you can get with it. And if you have a chart and you're consistent with it, you know, there won't be any complaints where somebody might get frustrated. But like there's one in here where it's like knockout tooth or teeth. So your teeth get knocked out.
Yikes.
And there's a healing time. I'm not sure exactly what how that works yet. But what effect it has is it's persuasion, which I'm assuming that's like, it's persuade or you know, your charisma skill, and at -2. So you have a penalty because your teeth are missing. So those are interesting things. And obviously like broken hand, pelt eye, there's different gouged eye, which affects your marksmanship and observation. So there's fun things you can do with that if you wanted to explore a chart or something.
So you call this the Year Zero engine?
Yeah, it's used for a lot of the free league games.
Or Batman?
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, because I think their first game was Mutant Year Zero, and that's where they came up with it, and it's been used for a bunch of games.
Marks, I think we have an episode.
I think so.
Yeah.
So it sounds like, just to recap here, maybe once you get playing, and if you get bored with how the D&D or everything's predictable, add in some injury system in there. Just be consistent, or at least perceived to be consistent, and you can look at other games for ideas if you want. You can make it as complex or as little complex as you want, and have fun with it, because it does make combat way more interesting, I think. Because the reason I play D&D for a lot of years and it gets boring sometimes because I just feel like it turns into like whack-a-mole, like bomb, 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 and you just hit
as long as you have the trust of your players, you've earned that trust, you can get away with anything. Like, if they know that you're treating fairly and you're interested in creating a good time, they will generally let you get away with whatever you want.
Yeah, if you're not cutting their legs off every 5 seconds.
I think what I'm going to do is find an injury chart, and if you're bloodied and you get crit, maybe you roll on the chart then. Something
I like that.
Yeah, well, and that Year Zero engine, again, I just start reading it, so I don't have strong feelings about this game anyway. But their SRD is free online. I'll put the link in the description.
Oh, okay.
I'll try to put links to some other games too if they have free quick starts or something.
Rifts,
of course.
Symbiosis.
Yes, I have put Cyber Symbiosis.
Oh, really? Cyber Symbiosis. That is. Oh, I don't have a copy.
Well, what Cyber Symbiosis do of injury?
Is there a site they could go to, Woody? I don't know.
Yes, I do, for this book. Yes, VentureDragon.com. You got to buy the book, but we have it the PDF for sale quite economically. So, yeah. Well, I talk about it a lot. I've actually got it expanded conditions, and I've got talk about how the GM can arbitrate the situations, but it's not like a hard and fast rule. It's like this. It just talks about like how to make it more believable, and have create stakes in combat. So,
that's all you really. It adds flavor, right? It's more like it gives something people to imagine and play off of versus a video game vibe.
I like the idea. If you're below half health, you actually start getting worried. Like, oh crap.
Yeah, well, I mean, like if you shouldn't just be a healing yo-yo. Like I have it where every time you go down and you come, when they bring you back, you've got an injury, and injuries cannot be healed with magic healing, at least not so easily, right? They require time and medical treatment, and healing spells. Healing spells will speed it up, but it's not going to just make it go away instantly. Yeah. We need to stop. We're done.
Yeah, we can go on this forever.
Yeah.
All righty. So, we're done injuring people, and
yes.
But remember, what do you got? What games do you like the injury system of? Or are there homebrew rules that you do for your injury system in your 5e or whatever game you're playing? Leave it in the comments. Let us know. We watch them and we will comment. So
we do reply. We have
Yes.
long discussions sometimes with the comments.
Yes.
Sometimes, yeah. All right. Well, thanks everybody for watching. And until next time, this is Are the Game.
Bye.
When the dice roll high, we touch the sky. But when they crash, it's a belly laugh. Genre play, lighting the way. Our tales are